On a weekend when a pound-for-pound talent fought, two past their prime MMA fighters provided all the action in the boxing ring. What's up, it's Aaron Walker here with Ringside Intel, and let's talk about what the happened at Diaz versus Masvidal 2. So I was at attendance representing Ringside Intel at the boxing rematch between Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz. So I just want to share with you guys what my experience was due to less than ideal working conditions there with my media credentials. Figured a good way to sum things up would be provide you a video the day after. So let's get right into it. So let's start things off by talking about Carel Martin. I mean, he's an 18-year-old prospect out of the Mayweather camp. Floyd Mayweather actually showed up to the event to show his support, and this guy improved his record to 4-0. So a guy that early in his career, and Floyd Mayweather is in attendance and actually part of the broadcast booth for a little bit to hype this appearance, means he's very, very high on this kid, and I can see exactly why. I see why this guy has all the hype behind him. I mean, he showed a lot of power, a lot of patience. I mean, a lot of the ingredients that it's going to take to go far in boxing. And quite frankly, this young man keeps his head on his shoulders. He's going to have a great career, so I look forward to watching that develop. Devin Kushan and Manny Correa had a lot of bad blood coming into Saturday. That was really shown in some of the pre-fight build-up, particularly at the press conference. They were going back and forth with one another, and this all stemmed from them fighting in the amateurs. Devin Kushan lost that fight and said he was going on a revenge tour, and he got his revenge, got the decision over Correa. He really showed himself to be slicker, a more mature fighter, better shot selection, just overall a better boxer, and he was able to get the win with very little trouble. So from a hype and action standpoint, one of the high points of the evening was Amado Vargas versus Sean Garcia. Despite initially being respectful in the buildup, you know, things took a sharp turn at the pre-fight presser where it devolved into like a profane shouting match at the end. These guys really kept that same energy once the fight began. One of the more memorable things, and memorable for all the wrong reasons, was the appearance of Ryan Garcia. He walked out with his brother, and this was only days after he went on a full KKK rant and saying all sorts of hateful and despicable things. Honestly, I can say I was very sickened by the love that the crowd showed him. Can't say I'm surprised, but it is what it is. Sean missed weight by 3 pounds, ironically the same amount that Brian missed in his fight with Devin Haney. I mean, Vargas took full advantage of that perceived gap in his conditioning, and he attacked the body from very early on with a lot of power shots, a lot of flurries. I initially thought that that was going to be a bad play. I thought that he would burn himself out, and Garcia was playing a little bit of rope-a-dope, and then he would start kind of building up momentum as the fight went on. I mean, that moment just never happened. Vargas really took a lot out of him from those body shots. Even after the end of the first round, it looked like Garcia was dry heaving into the bucket, so he might have vomited. He certainly had a bad reaction to the repeated body blows, and he just couldn't see it to the distance. I believe it was the 6th round where the stoppage came, and it was kind of an anticlimactic stoppage, but it made sense. I mean, he essentially turned into a punching bag toward the end and just turtled up against the ropes, took too much damage. The ref did a very good thing by stopping it when he did. So Anthony Pettis, the former UFC and WEC lightweight champion, took on Chris Avila, who is an affiliate of the Nate Diaz camp. Now, this was a fight that didn't necessarily have a lot of hype coming into it, but you kind of expected a lot of action. Anthony Pettis was one of the premier action fighters in mixed martial arts history. Avila being a honorary Diaz brother, you expect some knucklehead sort of shenanigans there. So you would think these two, who are tough as nails, would have this really bloody back and forth war, and that just wasn't the case. I mean, the difference was Avila's just a better boxer. He's simply a more seasoned boxer. Pettis does have that win over Roy Jones in his pro boxing debut, but we're talking about Roy Jones that's like 50-something years old. We're also talking about Avila, a guy who began as a boxer before transitioning into mixed martial arts and now is back in the ring. So he really just had all the answers for whatever Pettis had to give him. And that's even with Pettis having a very clear athletic advantage and being one of the more accomplished combat athletes that's alive today. Just Avila just had a better night. Simple as that. And overall, it was a slow fight, but considering the affiliation to the Diaz brothers, I mean, this was a very pro-Diaz crowd in Southern California. So no negative reactions from the crowd despite how slow this fight actually was. So easily the most traditionally relevant fight on the card was Danny Jacobs and Shane Mosley Jr. Danny Jacobs making his return after, I believe, a 2-year layoff. Jacobs, as you know, 2-time welterweight champion, had some great fights with some great legends, and he being a legend himself. Well, Shane Mosley Jr. simply looked very impressive. He dominated the action from bell to bell. It's really a shame that the crowd was so antsy to watch Diaz and Masvidal by this point that they really showed no love for this fight. This fight provided more action than Avila and Pettis by far. So without that affiliation to the main event fighter, the crowd just didn't really show any love. To see a legend and a very clear, gifted, talented, hardworking fighter putting on the performances that they did and showing no love from the crowd, it's a shame. They missed out. And of course, the main event, Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal, what everyone had been waiting for. Nate Diaz gets the decision win by there in his classic death by 1,000 cut strategy. Masvidal really did well in my eyes. He dug to the body a lot of power shots, a lot of simply waiting for Diaz to finish these combinations that weren't really packing a lot of punch to get off some really, really hard punches. And quite honestly, I wasn't shocked at the scorecards. It was a close fight. And quite frankly, I think the draw is the only card that I can really stand behind. The cards that were giving a wide margin to Diaz just simply don't reflect what happened in the ring there. But I think this is a classic case of what do judges value? And with each judge, despite there being a clear layout for what the scoring criteria is, people are going to have their own sort of subjective interpretation of what those rules mean. So if you value activity and volume, then yes, Diaz won. But if you value effective boxing and landing more significant strikes, then Masvidal was very clearly the winner. But I think the draw is the only card that really made sense to me. From a pure entertainment standpoint, this delivered, I believe. When you get two guys who are not in their sport, and especially by the time, they actually saw each other in the ring, there was a long promotional buildup for this, a change of date as well. So by the time it happened, I think both these guys were simply over it. And you have the conditions for a dud at that moment. However, they kept it up from an entertainment standpoint. They both got in there with the full intentions on putting on a show and putting on a great fight for the fans. So without having any indication on what the pay-per-view numbers did as of yet, I can say from the in-arena experience, it was a success. Very entertaining card overall. Fight crowds can be very fickle, and a lot of times they don't like to show up until toward the end of the card. But I can say from the start of the pay-per-view, there was pretty much a packed house. So overall, great evening of fights. So what do you think? Did you watch Diaz versus Masvidal too? If so, what did you think? How did you score it? And what were your highlights of the evening? Remember to like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell more friends. Stay locked in the Ringside Intel. I'm Ant Walker. Peace.